I'm a 29-year-old woman working as a freelance interior designer in a town where nearly everyone knows each other. My name carries weight because of my job. A single bad impression can spread fast and cost me future clients. That's the downside of doing business in a place where word of mouth can either build your reputation or bury it. My older sister, Brielle, is 31 and works as a school counselor. She's loud, extroverted, and always the one cracking jokes at family gatherings. Since we were kids, Brielle has treated everything like a comedy sketch. Her favorite target? Me. From slipping fake notes into my school bag to replacing my birthday cake with a stack of frosted cardboard, she's been pulling harmless pranks all her life. Everyone would laugh. I didn't. Growing up, every time I complained, our parents brushed it off. She's just having fun, they'd say. You need to lighten up. But it was never fun for me. I'm not someone who likes attention. I don't like being embarrassed. I prefer quiet corners, calm conversations, and doing things properly. That difference between us only grew with time, but Brielle never outgrew the habit. 3 months ago, I was preparing for the biggest opportunity of my career. A local entrepreneur who owns a chain of co-working spaces had seen one of my previous projects and contacted me to redesign a high-end office he was launching in town. It wasn't just a job, it was an audition. If he liked my work, he'd recommend me to a network of business owners, influencers, and property developers. After months of work, site visits, mood boards, supplier negotiations, and long nights, I completed the space. To celebrate the reveal and subtly attract more clients, I hosted a small event at the venue. It was part showcase, part networking. I sent formal invitations to business contacts and kept the guest list tight. But since I was proud of the work, I also invited my parents and Brielle. I assumed naively that she'd behave. The space looked perfect. Warm wood tones, layered lighting, acoustic panels, ergonomic furniture. It was all polished. I had 3 presentation boards near the entrance that explained my process, materials, and inspiration. Each board had been reviewed, double-checked, and printed by a professional service. I even rehearsed my walkthrough multiple times. When the event started, things were going smoothly. My client arrived with 2 business partners and seemed genuinely impressed. As I was guiding them through the layout, I noticed a few odd looks when we passed the entrance display. One of the men laughed under his breath. My client's expression was more confused than amused. When I circled back to the boards, I saw it. Someone had swapped out the center board with a fake one, and later I found out Brielle had asked a venue staffer to deliver it, pretending it was a late correction. It had messy, cartoonish sketches mocking the entire design. Stick figures pointing at ugly chairs, labels that read "When minimalism meets discomfort," and sarcastic blurbs like "Design so sharp, it cuts your soul and perfect for those who hate cushions." My stomach dropped. I glanced over and saw Brielle recording my face on her phone from behind a fake plant. She was giggling like she'd pulled off a heist. I couldn't even react properly. I had guests standing beside me, trying to figure out if the board was a joke or part of the actual design. I switched the board out immediately and tried to salvage the rest of the tour, but the damage was done. My client made a polite excuse and left early. His business partners followed. 2 potential clients who RSVP'd didn't even bother checking in with me afterward. One of them was someone I'd been trying to work with for nearly a year. After the event, I walked outside and sat in my car for almost an hour. I didn't even start the engine. Just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, completely hollow. That display board was the first thing people saw when they walked in. Brielle's prank wasn't just immature, it was a direct hit on my work. Later that night, I confronted her. She laughed and said it was just like old times, but I saw a flicker of hesitation before she brushed it off like nothing. She laughed when I told her what it cost me. My parents. They sided with her. My mother told me to stop being dramatic and learn to take a joke. That was the moment something changed. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just went quiet. And I started making plans. I knew if I wanted to move past this, I couldn't just let it slide. She had humiliated me in front of people whose opinion mattered for my future. She thought it was funny, so I decided I'd remind her what it feels like to be the punchline. And unlike her, I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to be patient. And very, very precise. Once I knew Brielle wasn't going to apologize, or even acknowledge what she did, I stopped waiting for anything to change. I wasn't out to ruin her life or humiliate her in front of strangers. I wanted her to finally understand what it meant to be publicly blindsided and quietly humiliated, the way she had done to me. If that meant taking some time, effort, and money, so be it. It all started when I noticed how obsessed she'd become with a local influencer named Ava, someone fairly big in our town's lifestyle and home design scene. Ava was known for her glow-up home makeover series, where she'd pick women in the community for a surprise renovation of one room in their house. The winners usually got thousands of views, sponsorship deals, or free products. Brielle followed her religiously. She even tried tagging her on posts, commenting on every reel, and told our cousin she'd cry happy tears if Ava ever showed up at her door. Ava and I had worked together once before, staging rooms for a brand shoot she did last year. We weren't best friends or anything, but I knew she wasn't the type to go for petty revenge. I still reached out, told her the whole story, top to bottom. She didn't laugh or dismiss it. Instead, she agreed to help me, not to mock Brielle, but to help me teach her what emotional sabotage really feels like when it's delivered with a smile. We created a completely fake version of Ava's contest. Ava posted nothing about it publicly. Instead, I sent Brielle a direct email from an alias posing as Ava's assistant, linking her to a limited entry application form for a private version of the Glow Up Home Makeover contest. The instructions were clear. We were looking for inspiring stories from women in small-town neighborhoods. Brielle fit the bill perfectly. Within a day, she applied. Her submission was dramatic and personal. She wrote about how hard she worked as a school counselor, how she never did anything for herself, how her living space didn't reflect the woman she'd become. The kicker? She wrote that she wanted to feel proud to invite people into her home again. I saved that line. We took it a step further. Ava and I made up a document requesting a home tour video and a short, heartfelt message explaining why she wanted the transformation. Brielle didn't hold back. She cleaned every inch of her place, lit candles, dimmed the lights, wore makeup, and even staged a cozy corner with her dog sitting by a fireplace. The video had emotional background music. She sent it in within 48 hours. I replied, still posing as Ava's assistant, telling her she'd been shortlisted. We dragged it out for a few more days, then finally told her she'd been chosen. She was going to be the next feature in Ava's Glow Up reveal. A live announcement event was planned, and a camera team would be recording her reaction. The reveal would happen in a boutique-style event space downtown. We gave her the address, the dress code, and told her to arrive by 6 p.m. I booked the space myself and used part of my savings, and Ava pulled some strings to get us a venue discount while Liam offered to film the event as a favor. Soft lighting, minimal floral decor, mood music, a snack bar, and a few people planted to act like crew. Liam, a videographer friend of mine, offered to shoot the entire thing. He even brought a ring light, camera setup, and microphone to make it look legit. He knew the backstory and didn't ask questions. He just asked for the timing. Brielle arrived wearing a coral dress and heels. Her nails were freshly done. She brought a friend along, probably for the behind-the-scenes social media footage. We made sure she signed a fake release form, then guided her to the main room where a glowing sign read, "Glow Up begins in." She stood in front of the countdown. Everyone clapped and hyped her up. We played Ava's usual intro video on the projector, but right before the final frame, it cut to a different video entirely. The screen faded into a montage, clips and photos of Brielle's pranks over the years. The birthday cake switch, the water balloon incident at our cousin's engagement party, the fake job rejection letter she once sent to her best friend, and finally, the footage from the reveal night at my office launch. Everything shown clearly but calmly. No voiceover, just music and subtitles. Humor isn't always harmless. Sometimes the joke cuts deeper than you think. Imagine if it happened to you. She froze. Her smile vanished. Tina. Her friend looked around, unsure whether this was still part of the surprise. No one laughed. No one clapped. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, almost sterile. The last clip ended with, "Being the joke is only funny when it's not you." Then the lights came up. No one said anything. Brielle stood there, blinking, speechless for once. I walked up, took the mic, and thanked her for attending. She stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Then she turned around and walked out. Didn't speak, didn't yell. Just walked out. The next day, I found out she told our parents she had a weird experience at an influencer event and wasn't sure what it meant. She left out all the details. Which is fine by me, because we're only just getting started. When the video started playing at the event, Brielle smiled like she was still in control. For the first 15 seconds, she looked around, expecting applause or a twist that would put her back in the spotlight. But when her old pranks started flashing across the screen, things she probably forgot people recorded, her expression changed. There was a clip from my graduation where she switched my name card so someone else walked up during my announcement. Everyone laughed. I didn't walk at all that day. Another clip showed her fake crying at my birthday dinner, pretending I'd forgotten her anniversary, just to turn attention to herself. Then there was the recorded moment she barged into a client pitch years ago, dressed as a fake building inspector, claiming the space had code violations as a joke. The client never called back. Each clip faded into the next with soft music and short text. Not all jokes land. Attention isn't the same as affection. Humor stops being funny when it breaks trust. The final segment was a pre-recorded message from me. I didn't speak angrily or dramatically. I explained what happened the night of my reveal, what it cost me, and how it wasn't about just one prank, but a pattern. A build-up. A breaking point. Brielle didn't make it to the end. She turned and walked out halfway through the video. Her friend stayed, looking like she didn't know whether to follow or pretend she wasn't part of the evening at all. Ava kept the event light afterward with a quick thank you to the team and a toast to reflection. She didn't name names, didn't explain anything, just left it at that. The next day, Ava posted a single story with a white background and black text. Not every makeover is physical. Sometimes growth begins with reflection. No tags. No photos. Nothing else. Brielle didn't mention the contest again. She didn't post about it, didn't bring it up with friends, didn't answer when someone asked what happened at the reveal. A mutual friend said she claimed the event was more of a creative workshop than anything glamorous. That was the only thing she offered. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my parents. My mother was angry. She asked how I could trap my own sister in a public setup and said I embarrassed the family. I reminded her about the video Brielle filmed of me crying after my client left, how she captioned it "Interior Disaster LOL" and sent it to a family group chat before I even got home that night. She paused, then she hung up. An hour later, my father sent me a long message. He said I shouldn't ruin the family over petty things and begged me to stop escalating this. He asked me to call Brielle and apologize. I didn't reply. I just left the message on read. Over the next few weeks, something strange started happening. People who had been at my original reveal, clients, business owners, even a local event planner, started reaching out again. One of them emailed saying they'd reconsidered things and wanted to discuss their office renovation after all. Another asked if I had space to take on a hospitality redesign. One of the most unexpected compliments came from a commercial manager who had stayed silent during the reveal night. He said, "If you can stage that kind of real-life drama and still keep everything polished, you can handle any kind of stress." I didn't expect my quiet response to the prank to become part of my reputation, but it did. People saw that I stayed calm, that I handled it without yelling, name-calling, or making a scene. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. And I think people respected that. Then, out of nowhere, Brielle sent me a message. It was long, emotional, and full of backpedaling. She said I'd gone too far, that I humiliated her in front of everyone she knew, and that she couldn't believe I'd turned something so small into something so theatrical. She didn't mention the pranks. Not once, just focused on how she had felt, how she had been treated. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted her to sit with it, let the silence speak. Meanwhile, my friends, especially those who had seen what happened at the reveal and after, thought I'd gone too easy. A few of them had seen my years of work getting overshadowed by a single moment of funny sibling chaos, and they wanted more than just one awkward event to make up for it. But I wasn't after punishment. I wanted change? And Brielle hadn't reached that part yet. She was embarrassed, but not remorseful. She had paused, but not reflected, which is why I was already planning the next step. One that didn't involve events or videos. One that would reach the part of her life she actually cared about more than social media attention. Her work. After the reveal event, Brielle didn't reach out again. No calls, no visits, no attempts to talk things through. But she didn't go quiet either. Instead, she started reshaping the story in her own way. I started hearing from acquaintances, former classmates, even distant relatives, people asking why I went after my own sister in public. A few even said they heard I had set her up to make myself look better. At first, I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. But then a mutual friend sent me screenshots. Brielle was texting people that I had planned the whole thing like a performance and that I was jealous because she always had more charm, more friends, and more attention. In one message, she claimed I had nothing going on professionally and that I needed to steal her spotlight just to feel important. That was when I realized silence wasn't going to fix this. If anything, it was giving her room to rewrite the truth. So I changed my approach. Instead of reacting to her directly, I went back, not just into memories, but into the people she had left in the wake of her so-called jokes. The ones who never said much at the time, but carried the embarrassment quietly for years. The first person I reached out to was our cousin Sabrina. A few years ago, at Sabrina's engagement party, Brielle thought it would be funny to hire someone to crash the event dressed as a stripper, claiming the groom had a wild past. It ruined the night. Sabrina's parents had to escort elderly family members out while the groom's mother cried in the hallway. Everyone pretended to laugh it off to keep things civil. The second person was Lana, an old school friend of mine. Back when Lana worked at a coffee shop downtown, Brielle had called pretending to be her manager and told her she was being let go for rude behavior. It was supposed to be a joke. Lana found out 20 minutes later after crying in the supply room and walking out mid-shift. No one really talked about it after that. I contacted both women, privately and respectfully. I asked if they'd be willing to talk on camera, not for public release, but for something personal. Something I needed to help my family finally see the pattern. Both agreed. Sabrina filmed her part at her dining table. She described the mix of shock and humiliation, how people still mention it when they talk about the party. Lana recorded hers in her living room, saying she never felt like she got her dignity back after that day, even though she was rehired immediately. Neither clip was dramatic or emotional. They were calm. Honest. Real. I edited the videos into a short 7-minute reel and added brief subtitles for clarity. I wasn't planning to post it anywhere. I just wanted one person to see it. My mother. She had defended Brielle from the start. Every time I tried to explain how deep the damage ran, she dismissed it as sibling tension. So I asked her to meet me for lunch at a quiet cafe. Nothing fancy. I ordered her usual tea. When we sat down, I didn't make a speech. I just played the video on my phone and pushed it across the table. She didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions. Just watched. When the video ended, she looked down and didn't say a word for almost a minute. Then she asked softly, "Why didn't anyone say anything before?" I told her we did. Many times. She just didn't hear it, or didn't want to. She didn't argue. That night, she called again. Her voice was low and quiet. Before that, during the video, I'd seen her glance away at certain moments, her expression not quite matching her words. It was the first time she had ever used those words with me, and even though I didn't fully trust it, something in her tone felt different this time. Not defensive. Not rehearsed. Just tired. I didn't bring it up again. I wanted her to sit with it. A few days later, something strange happened. Brielle started planning a house party. A themed one. Bright colors, upbeat music, open invite. Word spread fast. One of her friends even messaged a mutual contact saying she was reclaiming the narrative and planning to prove she was still the fun one in the family. Then I got an invite. Not a message, not a call. A printed invitation card left at my front door in an envelope with my name handwritten in glitter pen. It was unexpected and deliberate. But what she didn't realize is, by trying to reset her image, she gave me the perfect setup. And I already knew exactly what I was going to do with it. Brielle posted the event on her socials with a caption that read, "Game night, time to reset vibes, reconnect, and laugh again." It looked casual enough until you saw the details. A rented rooftop space with string lights, custom drink names, monogrammed napkins with her initials BG embossed in gold, and a photographer discreetly snapping polished candids like it was a launch party for a personal brand. It wasn't a gathering. It was a curated performance. She'd invited a very specific group, coworkers who didn't know the full story, extended family who stayed out of drama, acquaintances who loved being part of anything that looked shiny and exclusive. People who wouldn't question the setup, just smile for the camera and sip the Brielle Breeze signature cocktail. I almost didn't go. I had nothing to prove, and nothing to gain. But curiosity won. I wanted to see what her version of a reset looked like, and who she'd pretend to be when the spotlight was fully hers again. When I walked in, she greeted me like we were old friends. Hugs, air kisses, compliments about my outfit. No tension, no mention of anything past, just polished charm. Halfway through the night, after the drinks had started loosening people up, she stepped to the center of the venue holding a microphone and a champagne flute. She gave a little speech thanking everyone for coming together to support each other after such a weird month, and then casually slipped in a line about bad press and misunderstandings making people forget who we really are. Polite laughter followed. A few raised brows. Some guests looked around, unsure what she was referring to. Others clapped lightly. Then came the real centerpiece of the night, Brielle's game show. She had printed out a stack of trivia cards with her own photo on the back, calling it No Me or Nah. It was styled like a party icebreaker, but each question centered around her life, her preferences, her favorite restaurants, her past mischief. The first few were easy guesses, her favorite karaoke song, the name of her childhood dog. Then came the one that made the room stall. "What's the funniest prank I've ever pulled?" Someone near the back chuckled nervously. Another person mumbled something about a high school prank involving balloons. But before anyone could give a full answer, Brielle smiled and read out what she had written, "Fake stripper at my cousin's engagement." Hands down. She laughed out loud, looking straight at Sabrina. Sabrina didn't laugh. Neither did the small group near her, who remembered that night clearly. A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of Brielle's coworkers, who had no idea what she was referring to, actually applauded and said, "That's wild." Brielle lit up again. That's when Sabrina stood up and quietly walked out. I followed her. She didn't say anything at first, just stood by the stairwell looking out over the parking lot. I told her I hadn't known the cards would reference that specific moment. I apologized for not warning her how Brielle might spin things. She nodded, took a breath, and said, "I'm not leaving. I'm just collecting myself. Let's show her how grown women handle truth." We went back in. By the time we returned, Brielle was starting the second round of her trivia. People were more cautious now. Less laughter, more polite smiles. She pulled another card from the stack, but before she could read it, Sabrina stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cause a scene. She just looked at Brielle and said, "Your pranks don't land because you punch down. That's not charisma. That's cruelty with a cute laugh on top." The room froze. The photographer stopped mid-shot. Someone lowered a drink without taking the sip. Brielle blinked, gave a short laugh like she hadn't heard properly, then tried to pivot. "It's just trivia," she said, smiling again. "Let's not take things too seriously." But the tone had shifted. Completely. Sabrina didn't speak again. She just walked to her seat and started chatting with a guest beside her about work. People followed her lead. Conversations resumed, but the mood had changed. No one touched the trivia cards again. The photographer stopped taking photos. The signature drinks went unfinished. Brielle didn't leave, but she didn't finish her trivia segment either. The rest of the night limped along with light music and awkward mingling. A few people left early. When I left the party, the napkins were still stacked, untouched. Her initials in gold now looked more like branding for someone selling a version of themselves they couldn't keep up with anymore. She had invited us to help her reclaim the narrative. Instead, she gave us the perfect audience to watch it fall apart. The morning after the rooftop party, the photos started disappearing from Brielle's social media. First, the group shots. Then the trivia card images. By noon, even the drink menu post had been deleted. Guests who tried tagging her in their photos found their tags removed. Within a day, it became clear she wasn't just cleaning up her feed, she was distancing herself from certain people entirely. Kayla, one of the guests who had attended with no prior knowledge of the drama, messaged me later. She said Brielle had stopped replying to her texts, even though they'd been close for months. Another mutual friend told me Brielle was overheard saying, "Some people take jokes too seriously. That's their issue, not mine." But then Kayla shared something that caught me off guard. During the party, while people were still mingling after Sabrina's call-out, Brielle had gone to the bathroom and stayed there for nearly 15 minutes. Kayla had gone to check on her and heard her say through the stall door, "Why do they all hate me now?" That stayed with me. I hadn't wanted that. I didn't want to ruin her or turn her into a social pariah. The point was never destruction, it was about making her see the line she kept crossing, and who got hurt because of it. Later that week, Ava messaged me. She was the influencer who had helped with the staged makeover contest at the beginning of this story. She told me that Brielle had recently reached out to her, asking if the contest could be run again, this time for real. Ava said Brielle's message was polite, but clearly trying to reset the dynamic between them. Ava gently declined. She said it had been a one-time collaboration, and she hoped Brielle was doing well. I thanked her for letting me know and didn't think much else would come from it. Then late one afternoon, someone buzzed my apartment. I checked the intercom and saw Brielle standing at the entrance, holding a small white plastic bag. I almost didn't answer, but something about the way she stood, not posed, not smiling, made me open the door. She came in without theatrics. No big entrance, no sarcastic remarks. Just handed me the bag, which had 2 pastries from my favorite bakery across town. We sat at my kitchen table. She didn't waste time pretending this was just a social visit. She looked me in the eye and said, "I think I need help seeing where the line is." I thought I was being funny, but it's clear I wasn't. I listened. I didn't interrupt. She told me she had finally watched the entire reel from the makeover event. She said she'd avoided it at first, didn't want to give me the satisfaction. But one night, she sat alone and played it all the way through. "I didn't want to believe it," she said. "But it hit different hearing other people say the same things you've said for years." I asked her if she wanted to make things right, not just with me, but with the others. Sabrina. Lena. Even people she didn't remember hurting, but who still remembered how she made them feel. She didn't have a speech prepared. She didn't cry or make excuses. She just nodded and said, "I don't know how to start." I told her that if she was serious about it, she couldn't make this about defending herself or clearing the air. She had to listen. Fully. Quietly. Let people speak, and accept it without spinning it into a joke or a redemption story. If she couldn't do that, it was better to leave things where they were. She agreed. Said she wanted to learn how to fix it, even if it took time. That was the first time I saw a shift, not in how she presented herself, but in how she sat in the silence that followed her own words. She didn't fill it with charm or laughter. She just sat there. We didn't plan anything that day. I didn't promise anything either. I just told her one thing: understanding isn't the same as change, and change takes more than one conversation. She left the pastries on the table and said she'd reach out when she was ready to start, not talk, start. For the first time in a long while, I believed she might actually mean it. A week after Brielle showed up with the pastries, she sent a short message asking if I'd go with her to meet Sabrina and Lana. She'd already reached out to both, she said, and they'd agreed to coffee. I told her I'd go, but I wouldn't be speaking on her behalf. If she wanted to make things right, it couldn't come through me. She had to carry her own words. We met at a small cafe on the east end of town. It wasn't a long drive, but the silence in the car ride there was thick. Brielle looked nervous, not fidgety, but tightly wound, like she knew there wouldn't be space to charm her way out of anything. When we walked in, Sabrina and Lana were already seated. No smiles. No small talk. Brielle sat down and didn't waste time. She fumbled a bit at first, starting with half sentences and glancing toward me once or twice. I didn't say a word. Then she took a breath and said clearly, "I hurt you both. I'm sorry." Sabrina didn't jump in with forgiveness. She looked her in the eye and asked, "Why now?" Brielle answered without theatrics. She said she used to think if people laughed, that meant they were okay with it. And if they didn't say anything, she assumed it wasn't a big deal. She admitted she never checked whether the joke worked for the other person, it just had to work for her. Lana leaned forward and said, "You've been told before, you just didn't hear it." Brielle didn't defend herself. She didn't make excuses. She nodded. The three of them kept talking. I stayed quiet. I watched Brielle listen without trying to spin the narrative, without turning the conversation into a moment about her emotional growth. She wasn't graceful. She stumbled through parts, but she didn't shut down. And that in itself was something new. The conversation lasted just under an hour. There were no hugs at the end. No promises of reunion dinners. Just a calm goodbye and Sabrina saying, "Let's see how things go." That felt more honest than any emotional outburst would have been. It wasn't a script. It was the beginning of a shift. A few days later, Brielle sent me a link. It was for an empathy and active listening workshop for educators, held at a local training center. She'd signed up for the next available session. I didn't send back a heart emoji or praise her for it. I just replied, "Good start." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Around the same time, I received an email from a client I hadn't heard from since the reveal night months ago, the one where Brielle had swapped my design board with a parody. This woman had left the event early without a word. I assumed I'd lost her for good. But now she was reaching out with a new project. She said she'd been watching quietly, that she'd heard from others how I handled things, not just in the moment, but afterward. She told me, anyone who can recover from that with grace is someone I want designing my firm's new offices. The job offer came with a long-term contract and a high-profile portfolio boost. I signed it the next day. Later that week, I had a call with my mother about something unrelated. We were talking about an upcoming family event when she paused and said, "I might not have been fair to you before." She didn't turn it into a lecture about family unity. She didn't follow it up with a but. She just said it and let it hang there. For someone who had spent years brushing off my boundaries as overreactions, that one sentence meant more than a dozen apologies. I never set out to ruin anyone's life or make a villain out of my sister. I didn't want a performance. I just wanted the people who hurt me to stop pretending it wasn't happening, or that it was somehow my fault for not laughing along. I didn't need them to fall apart. I needed them to pause long enough to look back. And now, for the first time in years, I feel seen. Not as the quiet one who takes things too seriously, or the one people roll their eyes at for not being fun enough, but as someone whose boundaries matter. Someone whose work, time, and emotional safety aren't a joke to be unwrapped in front of an audience. That shift didn't come from a single apology. It came from what happened after. And while I don't know if Brielle and I will ever be close, I do know this: change doesn't start with noise. It starts with the quiet moments when people finally stop laughing at the wrong things.